It is time now for the big story. And Prince Harry will very likely be held to account by Donald Trump if he lied about drug use on his visa application, according to a foundation fighting for the release of his immigration records. Now, the Duke's application to live in the US came under scrutiny after he admitted in his memoir Spare to using drugs, something that he would have been required to disclose in immigration documents. Nile Gardiner, director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom, sued the Biden administration for release of the Duke's visa application. But a federal judge in Washington ruled last month that it should not be released to the public. However, does the election of Donald Trump pose a fresh new headache for Prince Harry and his legal status as a US citizen? Well, I'm delighted to say that the aforementioned Nile Gardiner from the Heritage Foundation joins me now. Nile, good to see you again. Why might a change of president be significant here?
Great to see you, Mark. Thanks for having me on the show today. I do think that Donald Trump's election as president is a real game changer, and it will be really at the discretion of the president to decide whether or not Harry's records are released. We have called for the release of Prince Harry's records. The Biden administration has fought tooth and nail to protect Prince Harry's privacy, as they call it. And it's certainly our view, I think, that the next US president who comes in January should release those records to the American people so they can judge for themselves what is exactly inside Prince Harry's immigration application. And I think that Donald Trump has made it very clear in the past that he would not protect Prince Harry, that he would take appropriate action against Harry if he lied on his application. So let's see whether Harry was honest and truthful in his application. If Prince Harry has nothing to hide, he should fully support the release of his own records.
Does President Trump hold any animosity towards Prince Harry, do you think, Niall?
I think that's really a question for President Trump himself. But I think that Harry and Meghan certainly have not helped themselves by, in the past, backing Democratic candidates. They did not get involved, of course, in this year's election, but in the past, they have sided with a lot of woke left-wing causes. Meghan Markle, of course, has been a big critic of Donald Trump in the past. So I do think that, generally speaking, Harry and Meghan are hugely unpopular among the American people, but especially with US conservatives. They are very unpopular figures. And Meghan has made a number of attacks on Trump in the past, which certainly cannot, I think, in any way benefit the cause of Prince Harry in the United States.
Is it conceivable that Prince Harry could lose his citizenship and be thrown out of America? Well,
so Prince Harry, of course, is not a US citizen. Meghan Markle.
Oh, I see. I stand corrected. So, yeah, he's still a British passport holder. He obviously hasn't renounced that. Can you not have both?
Yeah, no, you certainly have both, but Prince Harry is not a US citizen. We're not sure exactly what kind of visa he is on in the United States. That's not been revealed, but I do think that Prince Harry will be fully held to account by the next president.
Interesting stuff. So it's all about that visa and whether he hangs on to it or not. Fascinating, Niall. Well, I know you'll be pursuing that further with the Heritage Foundation simply because you want the truth, and more power to you. Can we talk about Tuesday and that big result in the States? Some Conservatives are divided over Donald Trump, aren't they? Figures like Michael Gove backed Kamala Harris, as did Dick Cheney, who served under George W. Bush. So would your former boss, Margaret Thatcher, Lady Thatcher, have been a Trump supporter?
Well, I think Lady Thatcher would have actually got on very well with Donald Trump. And I think that she would have worked very closely with him. And if you look at the alternative to Trump as president, Kamala Harris as president of the United States, and I'm in no doubt that my former boss, Margaret Thatcher, would have viewed Kamala Harris as a very dangerous, ultra-woke, far-left figure. And Margaret Thatcher would have hated, I think, everything that Kamala Harris stands for. and she would have been mightily relieved that Donald Trump is the president, the next president of the United States, and not socialist Kamala Harris. So I do think the Iron Lady would have got on very well with Donald Trump. They would have had very robust discussions, I'm sure, but she would have been very pleased by the fact that the socialists are not going to take over the United States with Kamala Harris as president. I think that is the reality.
Indeed, although as a passionate advocate of free markets, she wouldn't have looked fondly on his protectionism, would she, or his enthusiasm for tariffs?
Yeah, she was very opposed to tariffs unless they're being applied to enemies of the free world like China, for example. Lady Thatcher was a strong supporter of economic freedom, free markets. I think Donald Trump overall is. And I do hope we're going to see a US-UK trade deal concluded in the next few years. But of course, we've got useless Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister of Great Britain at the moment. And Starmer, I think, is going to be in the doghouse, frankly, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, not least with 100 Labour activists campaigning for Kamala Harris in the US presidential election, a catastrophically stupid move by the Labour Party. And of course, Keir Starmer has not apologized for this. And you also have the likes of David Lammy, Foreign Secretary, who's called Donald Trump a neo-Nazi sociopath in the past. So all of this doesn't help. And I think that Trump undoubtedly will view Keir Starmer as a woke lefty. And I think that Trump will seek to work very closely with conservatives in the United Kingdom rather than with the socialists.
That's interesting. Of course, Keir Starmer will argue that he's had successful meetings with Donald Trump. They spoke on the phone in the last couple of days. And Donald Trump was quoted as saying, "You will always have a friend in me." Do you not think that if Keir Starmer managed to get a trade deal with the US across the line, that would actually be quite a positive for the Prime Minister and perhaps reboot his own premiership?
Well, I think a US-UK trade deal would be a huge positive, and a lot of the negotiations were already conducted, of course, under the Conservatives previously with Trump when he was president. But I have very little faith in Keir Starmer's willingness and ability to put in place a trade deal. I think the socialist government in the UK right now is a disaster for Britain. It's disastrous for the special relationship with the United States. US conservatives have a very negative view of Keir Starmer and his ultra woke government, and so I do think Starmer's going to have a very, very tough time. And Donald Trump has very little tolerance for far left woke lefties like Keir Starmer.
There you go, damning words from the former personal aide to Lady Thatcher, Nile Gardiner. Nile, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up soon. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Good evening. Now, amid all of the excitement around the US election result this week, it's worth remembering that whilst the Americans have chosen an orange president, our red prime minister is currently destroying the country. Don't take my word for it. Following Rachel Reeves's budget for growth, an Orwellian example of doublespeak if ever there was one, Sainsbury's, Marks and Spencer's and BT have said that they will likely have to raise prices. And the boss of the Wetherspoons pub chain, Tim Martin, said all hospitality businesses will now have to charge customers more just to stay afloat. Meanwhile, the polyester palace that is Primark, which I'm currently wearing tonight, you're welcome, be careful, I'm flammable, they say that they may now have to invest more overseas due to the weight of tax rises. Sainsbury's boss Simon Roberts has revealed a £140 million hit from Rachel Reeves's national insurance tax raid, which will inevitably be passed on to their brilliant staff and you and me when we buy our fruit and veg following this lemon of a budget. Retailers also face higher labour costs after the government increased the national minimum wage, which of course is a lovely policy, but it means that inflation will go up and layoffs are inevitable, particularly among smaller firms. Now, Sainsbury's Simon Roberts is a great CEO and will do his level best to protect staff and customers. But he has admitted, and I quote, "There just isn't capacity to absorb all of this. Meanwhile, that wonderful budget for growth announced by Rachel Reeves, which makes Liz Truss's budget look like a masterclass in economics by comparison, has seen the OBR revise down Britain's growth expectations. How can a budget for growth immediately lead to lower growth? Make it make sense? Well, of course, it doesn't. And this week, the Bank of England have said that inflation will now go up slightly and will have to wait a year longer than previously expected for prices to reach the target of 2%. How this is a win for the country is anyone's guess. Meanwhile, farmers have been thrown under the tractor with an inheritance tax raid that threatens future food supply. Farming is one of the hardest and least financially rewarding industries out there. I truly adore Jeremy Clarkson, a total hero. But the only real money that he makes at diddly squat is the fat check that he receives from Amazon Prime, who make his fantastic TV show. Our farmers, that's right, real farmers, are true national heroes. And the bottom line is that any offspring mad enough to take on the family farm should not have to pay tax when they do so. The alternative is obese health guru Bill Gates buying up the land for solar panels or fake meat or something. Even the mild-mannered and politically neutral Paul Johnson from the Institute for Fiscal Studies is raging at Labour's continued claim to have not raised taxes. Writing on X this week, he said, seriously, I know this was in the Red Book and I'm no expert on rules covering what government departments can say and cannot say. But at best, this is dubious, and that is being generous. Increasing national insurance was the central tax-raising measure in the budget. What is the point in pushing this line? Good question. Now, many won't worry about Sainsbury's, Marks and Spencer's and Primark, arguing that they've got millions. Well, it's clear that their workers, who are not millionaires, will likely be made poorer as they shoulder some of the cost of these tax increases via lower wages, cancelled bonuses and even the sack. And businesses are already shutting up shop. Over the last 4 weeks alone, more than 1,600 company directors have chosen to wind down their businesses. Take Kevin Hancock, managing director of the modestly sized Connectix Cabling Systems, who told The Telegraph this week that the Chancellor's national insurance tax raid and lifting of the national minimum wage had made manufacturing in Britain not viable. The specialist cable manufacturer, which had revenues of £50 million in 2023, exports fibre optic cables to internet providers around the world and employs 150 people in its British factories. But the company has now decided to outsource production to India or China following this new Labour government's first budget. Well done, everyone. Under Donald Trump, the Americans have voted for boom. But under Starmer, we're going bust.